Okay, standards. So, a standard is very generally a way of doing something to a certain degree with some precise criteria for achieving and repeating it. It's how good you want something to be ideally and how good something has to be at a minimum for it to count. It's about quality and degree. We have personal standards for pretty much everything in our lives. We automatically do things to our standards and seek out things that meet our standards without even thinking about it. When we involve someone else in any capacity, it becomes a negotiation of interpersonal standards. And then you have things like work standards or safety standards, health standards, different things. This video, I'm just focusing on personal and interpersonal standards. Personal standards are your own preferences for the quality of things in your life. Your personal standards are mostly based on emotion, the way you like doing things, but they can be informed and changed through logic. They're subconscious, very ingrained, and they have to do with what you personally seem to like. Things like cleanliness, financial stability, the entertainment you spend your time on. These are things you set a standard for, probably without even thinking, and we get unhappy when our standards aren't being met. You don't want to settle for anything below that standard. And it's easier to figure out your standards when you live alone or spend a lot of time alone because you don't have someone else there influencing you or pressuring you in any way. Because you're not being influenced by anyone else. There's no pressure to meet someone else's standards. You can actually see what your standards are free of influence. Standards can go up and down over time, but a lot of it depends on that person wanting to change their standards or them just naturally changing them. And there's different situations where raising or lowering your standards can be beneficial. Having high standards or low standards for everything is not usually what's best. Interpersonal standards are at play anytime you're interacting with someone because you're affecting each other with how you like to do things, how you naturally do things. Interpersonal standards include treatment of yourself and others. So how you would like to treat your friends, family, strangers, enemies, and how you would like to be treated by them. And having similar standards or negotiating standards can make all of your relationships a lot more harmonious. Minimum standards should be lenient enough that you can be flexible, but strict enough that you don't just accept anything. If I'm only able to enjoy what I consider absolutely perfect movies, I'm not going to have any entertainment. But if I turn my brain off and just lap up any horrible movie like it's a masterpiece, that's not any better. I'd be entertained by everything and I'd spend all of my time just being mindlessly happy and distracted. It would be a simpler life. If someone ever asks you to clean something and you're like, I already did, not well enough you didn't. That is a clash of standards. People get into trouble because it appears they're not living up to what they say they'll do, when in their mind, they are. When this happens, I'm a fan of meeting in the middle. The person with the lower standards needs to do what they consider above and beyond. They need to go beyond what is acceptable to them and raise their standards up a little bit. And the person with the higher standards needs to have some flexibility and lower their standards and figure out what is acceptable at the bare minimum. And that depends on trust. It all comes down to a matter of trust, of whether this will work or not. Trust that the person with lower standards is genuinely putting in more effort and going above what they consider acceptable. And trust that the person with higher standards will genuinely recognize and appreciate that extra effort. If either person doesn't do this honestly, you get resentment and bitterness. You want to understand what your personal standards are so that you can guard against raising or lowering them to a degree that you're not comfortable with. Boundaries are minimum standards for what you consider acceptable treatment towards you. They're the lines of what you'll tolerate and what you won't. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about setting limits to make sure no one is controlling or mistreating you. If you don't know what your interpersonal standards are, you can't set healthy and effective boundaries, and you're more easily swayed or broken down over time. And within the context of morality, think about your values and principles and how rigid or flexible someone has to be, how rigidly someone has to abide by them for you to consider them a good person. If your standards are too high or too low when it comes to morality, you're going to find yourself in trouble with a lot of your relationships. How closely does someone have to match you for you to consider them a moral person? Standards are a layer of personalization that you can apply to your moral compass. How rigid or flexible are you on different aspects of morality? And notice your standards for entertainment, the stories you engage with, the books, films, TV, games, everything. They have a huge impact on your daily life and how you fit all these things together. So hopefully this was helpful and not too boring. Let me know. Did you get anything out of this? Does it make sense? Did you notice that you have personal standards for everything? Figuring out which things you want high or low standards for can help you organize and take control of your life. Start noticing the standards you set for yourself and the standards other people set for themselves. That's it for now. Bye, guys.